There's a really obvious way to tell whether a page of design sketches has been produced by a beginner or a pro, and I'm going to walk you through some steps that will elevate your design sketching to a level that will bring you increased confidence, make your sketching more communicative, and give you more credibility as a designer. So I'm talking about line weight, and our ability to control and vary our line weight as we sketch really does have a big impact on the success of our design sketching. By the end of this video, you'll understand why line weight is so important, and you'll see how its impact is so much greater than simply what we see on the page. And I'll show you 3 different ways that you can vary your line weight. Stick around to the end of the video for my favourite. And just to make it clear, we don't use line weight to make our sketches look good. We use line weight to help make sketching easier and more effective. It just happens to make our sketching look more professional too. Now, the most obvious way to vary our line weight is by carefully choosing which pen to use. And if you like using pencil because you find it a bit less permanent, then this could be the pen for you. It allows me to sketch super light lines with the greatest of ease because it's the narrowest of pens. This particular pen with a 0.05mm wide nib gives me a truly delicate line. On its own, a pen this narrow has really limited visual impact, but when we use it specifically for lightweight lines in the building of a sketch, it has real value. Pens like this often come in sets with different width nibs, and using a pen with a wider nib allows me to vary my line weight because there's a contrast between the 2 pens. But if you think this is the pen for the lightest of lines, well, it's not. More on that shortly. Now, on to the first reason why we need to practice varying our line weight. We call the lightest lines construction lines, and one of the reasons for this is that they act as building blocks for the sketch ahead. You can think of it like scaffolding, and scaffolding is there to support building work. Without scaffolding, most buildings just couldn't be built. So it's sensible to conclude that difficult sketches are even more difficult without construction lines or scaffolding. Any time you spend on improving your construction lines now is an investment that will make building complex sketches very much more achievable. So we should be practicing our construction lines even when we're sketching the simplest of shapes. Here I'm building a sketch that started with the most straightforward of all building blocks, a box. It's how I start almost all of my sketches. My first thought is proportion, and I'm trying to sketch a box that shares the same proportions as the object I'm sketching. Since I'm using my construction lines as building blocks, I might then go on and add a section to my initial sketch. For example, if I was sketching an object with a handle, I might add that in the form of another box. So again, I'm thinking about the proportions of my additional building block. Because my lines are so light in weight, I can draw them and redraw them, and continue to redraw them until I'm happy with where they are, and with their proportions and perspective. Now, just as I can add building blocks, I can remove them too. Here I'm removing the section underneath the handle that would allow space for the fingers of someone gripping it. Once we've got our basic shape largely constructed in lightweight lines, we can add features as we would if we were working virtually on computer. In this case, I'm thinking about rounded surfaces known as fillets. And specifically, I'm focusing upon comfort for the user and how the handle relates to the main body of the object. Our construction lines can quickly make our design thinking understood by someone looking at our page of sketches. To help us simplify the process, we can choose to build our 3D sketch in conjunction with 2D sketches. Dividing up side views, end views, and plan views can help us map out our sketch and transpose it onto our 3D shape. Now, one of the most valuable things about construction lines is how they help us with our decision making. But more importantly, sketching with construction lines will make us better at designing. And if you're asking how can a process that's all about making designs easier to sketch help you to become a better designer? Well, let me explain. When we sketch the lightest of lines, we can use them to assist us with our thinking. We're forming ideas in our minds and recording those ideas on the paper in front of us in real time. Construction lines bridge the gap between mind and sketchbook, and as the idea is forming in our mind, it's simultaneously forming on our paper. And as it's forming on our paper, we're adjusting it, rethinking, exploring design options and decision making all at the same time. As I'm imagining a fillet and sketching lightweight lines to visualize it, what's building on the paper in front of me might cause me to consider whether a larger radius could be better for my design. My page fills with evidence of my design thinking in real time, and when I feel that my sketches are getting too busy, I can simply move on to an empty part of the page. And there's no limit to how many sketches I can add. In fact, a busy page of sketches suggests a busy and active design session. Sketching with construction lines is simply the best way to integrate our thinking with our designing, and it's incredibly valuable in helping us to reach a flow state. In other words, when we don't notice other distractions because we're completely absorbed in our design work. So I've been referring to line weight a lot in this video, and before I talk through the next method of varying our line weight, I need to point out that a narrow pen that creates delicate lines is of limited use on its own, and you'll have noticed that I've been using heavier lines to pick out the important aspects of my sketches in my examples so far. And you can download all the sketches from this video along with everything you need to make sense of line weight, including a range of exercises to work through, by clicking on the link in the description below. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notifications bell if you want access to my videos as I upload them. As I mentioned earlier, pens with wider nibs give heavier line weight, and I can use these wider pens to pick out any of my design thinking that I want to focus on, or any design thinking that I want someone reading my page of design ideas to focus on. So my page of construction lines can start off looking busy and somewhat chaotic, but it really isn't. In fact, it's just a real-time record of my design thinking, or what's going on in my mind when I'm designing. And my heavier lines draw attention to where I want that attention. So here's a second way that we can vary our line weight, and this is quite different to the first way. I'm not using a range of pens here, in fact I'm using a single pen. The range of line weight comes from the pressure I put through the pen. Reducing the pressure reduces the line weight. Adding pressure adds line weight. As you can imagine, as we build our pen control, this process enables us to work quickly because we're not interrupting the process with putting pens down and picking new ones up. The range of pressure comes about by how we hold the pen, and we can simplify this a bit by thinking of our hand as being in one of two positions. For light lines, we can hold our pen how we normally would, but slightly loosely. And for heavier lines, we can extend the 3 or however many fingers we hold the pen within and have a slightly firmer grip. Give it a go, be a bit patient with the results, and you'll soon develop your pen control. I'd recommend checking out my course focusing upon the fundamental mechanics of design sketching. So with our lightweight lines beginning to map out our sketch, we can start to think about using them to help us with adding detail. Because nothing is permanent in lightweight lines, it only becomes permanent when we add line weight. We can move things around and take as many attempts as we'd like to position details and features. Here you can see that I'm experimenting with the size and shape of this feature until I'm happy with it. It's a switch, and whilst I'm placing and sizing it and giving myself more to go on than just the images flashing through my mind, I'm thinking about how accessible it would be and how easy it would be to use. And in the time it takes to position, reposition, resize and so on, a whole load of thoughts are going through my mind. How it looks, how it would function, what materials it might be made from, how it might be made, whether sinking it below the surface would make it less prone to accidental use, and so on. and I can experiment with these details in different sketches. Separating them out might help with my decision making. When I've explored aspects of my design thinking and I'm happy with my design decisions, I can start to add a little line weight. Adding line weight helps us to make sense of the thought process. It's as if we're signing off on our ideas as they're becoming more resolved. We might not be making any decisions at this stage of our design work, but we're laying out our thoughts as they stand, and we'll have this as a resource that we can go on and use in various ways as we get further through our process. Now, before I explain a third way, and my favourite, to vary our line weight, I'm going to give you one more reason why sketching with construction lines is so valuable if you're wanting to improve your design sketching. I think this should be the most compelling, and I hope it urges you to go on and use construction lines in all of your design work. And a quick reminder that if you want the sketches from this video, along with practice exercises and other useful resources designed to help you get to grips with sketching construction lines, just follow the link in the description below. So this is almost a byproduct of sketching with construction lines, but it's one of the most compelling reasons for becoming comfortable varying your line weight. When we sketch loose construction lines, and more particularly when we understand that the best construction lines are sketched loosely, without fear that they're looking messy, we're creating a low pressure environment for our design thinking. When we worry about our design work looking neat, we'll be anxious about every mark we're about to make on our paper, and we just won't improve. So if you want your sketching to improve, it's simple. You've got to give up on producing neat design sketches, and let's face it, your client's not going to pay you for artwork, and instead you've got to focus your efforts on developing design ideas, developing solutions for your client's problems. Removing this pressure to produce work for your portfolio is going to be revolutionary in improving your design work. So, sketch lightweight lines, embrace the messiness, see your early design work as a safe place for roughing out your design thinking, and know that introducing a bit of line weight will not only bring some order to your construction lines, but that your construction lines will start to disappear into your page. So that messiness will go and you'll be left with your design ideas at centre stage. Now finally, my favourite way to get that variation in line weight. You thought the 0.05mm pen was the lightest of lines, and I did too until I found this pen. And why do I love it so much? Well, because it's helped my students care less about their construction lines because they're less visible. So when a student's reluctant to use construction lines because they think they're messy, they're far less reluctant when the construction lines are even harder to see. And why are they harder to see? Well, it's because the ink is grey and the nib is still 0.05mm wide, it's just less visible because of the colour. The links to all the equipment I've used in this video are in the description below. I could get contrast in my line weight with grey pens of different widths, and even greater contrast if my construction lines are grey and my heavier lines are black. Let me know in the comments section if you found this video useful, and it'd be great to hear what you're struggling with so I can make content that you'll benefit from. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'd recommend this video next.